Annyeonghaseyo! Welcome to Afternoona Delight, where Leah, Megan, and Amy, romance novelists, and your K-romance guides. So grab some dekboki and listen to your new favorite unnies.
Annyeonghaseyo! It's Grace and Sarah again, crashing another Afternoona podcast with an episode of our own. Today, we're going to be talking about something we're all dreaming of doing, or at least it feels like we're all I know so many people going to Korea this summer. A trip to Seoul. Firstly, if you're not sure who we are, I am Grace, a Korean-American K-drama fan, and with me is Sarah, a British-Chinese K-drama fan who posts as at Kdrama This on Insta and has done some guest episodes with the Noonas. We did an introductory podcast to give you a bit of our background and our K-drama tastes, so go check it out if you haven't listened already. So I am heading back to Korea in a few months for the first time in 10 years. I grew up visiting my grandparents in Seoul for a month or two, most summers during elementary and middle school. And then I went back to teach English for 4 months between college and law school. And I've done a few shorter visits here and there, but I haven't been back since the spring of 2013 before having kids. So I am super excited to be going with my family, taking my 9-year-old and 6-year-old for their very first Korea trip this summer.
Oh, that is so exciting. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
And I found that I think Seoul especially is so children friendly, right? So it'll be such a nice experience for them.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I was oblivious about child friendliness before having children. So I'm
rightly so, to be honest, rightly so. Yeah. Whereas I've just come back from my first ever trip to Korea, where I was lucky enough to go on a business trip to Seoul, and I tacked on a few extra days as holiday afterwards. So in this episode, I think we're going to try and give you some hints and tips for traveling to Korea, like apps to use and what you might find useful to pack. Grace is hopefully going to teach us some handy phrases to use and some other general information we hope you find useful. We also asked our Patreon for some questions, so we're hoping to cover these as well. However, just to note that some questions we felt we weren't qualified to answer properly. So we're keen to invite some Korean guests to expand on these topics with us. So namely the LGBTQ plus experience for travelers and also those with disabilities. And we might also touch on the experience for those travelers who might or might not experience some kind of racism. So please watch this space. And also, if after listening to this podcast, you have some questions of your own, please feel free to email them to the main podcast email, afternoonadelight@gmail.com. And we can also pick these up in a follow-up episode. So let's start with Grace's upcoming trip, which I'm very excited for her for. You're currently in planning mode. So where do you recommend people start with planning a trip to Korea? Any tips?
So with any trip, do your research. Even though I have been to Seoul over a dozen times in my life, a lot has changed in the past decade. And I wasn't sure where to go or what to see because most of the times I've gone, I was not primarily a tourist. So even I had to do research. I started out with Google searches, looking at travel blogs and all kinds of 10 best lists and things like that. But what I found actually more helpful was because I am a member of a Korean American moms group, a Korean cooking group, and an Asian drama group on Facebook, the algorithm helpfully suggested I join a couple of Korean travel groups. So I have just been reading other people's posts for a couple months now, both whatever pops up on my timeline and by searching through old posts for things that interest me. And I really recommend doing this kind of thing on Facebook or Instagram or Reddit or whatever socials you use if you don't know where to start, because I think you don't know what you should be preparing for until you start reading what other people's experiences have been. Like things like renting a Wi-Fi egg, a hotspot little gadget, or getting a SIM card at Incheon Airport upon arrival, or how to navigate booking KTX tickets, and even the best ways to go about getting tickets for K-pop concerts are spelled out and detailed in the comments of these posts. So it's not too overwhelming. And then there's a bunch of posts recommending apps you should download. And, when I last went in 2013, that was not really even a thing, as far as I knew. But before I share the recommendations I found on Facebook for apps, Sarah, do you have any tips for apps you found helpful on your trip, like actual experience?
Oh, so just to say, we will put in the show notes the apps and the Facebook sites and things that we recommend in the show notes, so that you don't have to kind of, if you're listening to this in the car, worry about trying to remember all the things that we're kind of recommending. So for me, obviously I was only there for a short amount of time, so I didn't download a ton of apps, but the ones I recommend are Naver, which is a map app. So for those of you who don't know, Google Maps doesn't work very well in South Korea. And I think my understanding of this, and Grace, correct me if I'm wrong, is that obviously because technically North Korea and South Korea are still technically at war. So things like maps and satellite imaging and things are sensitive topics for South Korea. So Naver is obviously an indigenous Korean app. So their maps are the most easy to use. Like Google literally, you can find out where places are on Google, but you won't be able to navigate very easily. But Naver is really extensive. It has really good navigations to walk, take public transport and drive, as well as, recommendations for places to go. And it has a version in English as well, so you don't have to worry. So when you first see it, you're like, I can't read, so I can't read Korean. If you're in Seoul, it's likely you're going to use the subway. So I found the Subway Korea app a must. There are signs in English everywhere, but the directions of the line are usually shown as both the end destination and the next stop. So you kind of need to work out which direction you want to go to. And the app has a journey planner and the subway map, as well as times of the next train and when it's going to come. So I was using that all the time whenever I was on the subway, because the subway system is massive. There's another app called Papago, which is an essential Korean language app, which I used also quite a lot. So it both translate what you want to say in Korean, but also has a conversation function, which is really good. So you basically say what you want to say in English, and then it translates it in Korean. And then the other person says what they want to say in Korean, and it translates it to you in English. So you could have a conversation via the Papago app. And then also it has an ability to translate written Korean. So optimal character recognition, I think it's called OCR. So it's really helpful for menus and signs. So you could just take a picture of the menu or the sign and then tap each character and it will tell you what it is in English. So I also found that super helpful too. And then the last one is KakaoTalk. So if you have a Korean friend, they will probably use this already, and the stickers inside are super cute. And I think last time you guys mentioned you're using this at the moment for a BTS related chat, Grace?
Yes. Our NorCal Army group has found 3 different sets of BTS stickers on KakaoTalk. Actually, Koreans call it KakaoTalk. They shorten it, KakaoTalk. But they're super cute and fun to use. And there's also these little animated critter emojis that I've been using with my family for years, before discovering the joys of army life. And Kakao is also a big, Korean technology company. So it has a map app also, and a taxi app, which is really useful if you feel a little intimidated by having to, actually hail a taxi and then have an interaction with the driver about where you're going, because you could just input that all in the Kakao Taxi app, and it'll tell the driver exactly where you want to go. And you don't even have to link a credit card to the app. You can actually pay in person once you've reached your destination. I have heard and read in a lot of Facebook group posts that Naver map is the more highly rated and user-friendly map, but I have both just in case. And Naver does tend to have like a lot more user ratings for dining options, etc. So I've been using both of them, kind of looking at both of them in preparation. Obviously, the maps are going to be the most useful once I am in Korea. But the other really helpful thing I've found, as I just mentioned, is that I can use them to scout out dining options, places to go, bookmark it. Yeah. So I will search in the neighborhood where I will be at a certain part in my itinerary, and then I'll bookmark a bunch of options like, oh, this is a good option if I want Korean food at that time. Oh, this is a good option if my kids are tired of that and want pizza or whatever. And then it's really good for figuring out, like, will I be able to eat anything if you have specific food restrictions?
Yeah.
Or if you have specific things you really want to try, like I really want to try, Pyongyang naengmyeon or something like that. So you can like scout it out ahead of time so that you're not kind of in the neighborhood being like, okay, now where do I go? So that's what I've been using the maps for so far. And I've bookmarked the addresses for my accommodations, the US Embassy, and shopping. And there's another app for food reviews that's like Korean Yelp called Mango Plate. But I actually think that the map is easier because you can, just have all the information in one place. And then there is another app that I found called Klook. And I don't think it's a Korean specific one because I've seen different countries and cities on it, but it has a bunch of different deals and experiences you can book. And the experiences are really wide ranging. There's a goblin shooting locations tour, for example. And then there are DMZ tours, makgeolli brewing experiences, like cooking and tasting experiences, and more. I've seen a couple other similar apps called Trazy and KK Day, but I haven't figured out if those are as legit. Well, actually, Trazy seems legit, but I can't download the app because it's not compatible with my version of Android, which is unfortunate because one of the things that I was able to see on Trazy was like you could sign up for being in the studio audience for like a music program.
Oh, wow.
So then you can like, I don't know if you'll be able to know ahead of time who's going to perform, but you can see live performances without going through the like rigmarole of trying to book a concert tickets. When you're there.
Cool.
Yeah.
I use Klook in Hong Kong actually, so I do second that as a recommendation. I got a lot of really cheap tickets to the theme parks, and mainly Hong Kong Disneyland and other places. But also want to recommend Airbnb for experiences. So it's like the lesser known part of Airbnb is having experiences, but they're pretty good for Seoul. So I tried a night market tour, which I recommended. I figured because I was kind of on such a short time constraints that I thought a tour would be really good, because then I'd get to do everything and see everything, but not be wandering around for hours trying to work out where I'm going and what to eat.
Right.
So I do really recommend that particular tour. I can put the link again in the show notes, and I'm actually gonna see if I can get the tour guide who took us around to come on the pod, because she was so much fun. Because part of the tour is she takes you out to drink some soju, and she teaches you some Korean drinking games as part of it. And also I posted it on Instagram at the time about this, but it's the octopus dish, the one where it's literally freshly made, so the octopus is still moving. I don't know what the name of that is.
I don't know either. I've never wanted to eat it, so I have not committed that to memory.
But like my fellow travel companions, though, they were so brave. They were like, going for it. I was just like, I could not handle it at all.
Yes, I wouldn't be able to either.
No. But yeah, so we got to try. But and also the pro of doing the tour was that she'd buy like one dish or two dishes, and then we'd all share a little bit, because the other problem with night markets is that there's so much food and you want to try it all, but by the time you've ordered a portion of this and a portion of that and a portion of something else, you're like full and you can't eat anymore, right? So
Right.
because every portion is shared between the 5 or 6 people that were on the tour, it meant that you have got enough room to try a little bit of everything. So by the
That
end
sounds
of
great.
the end of the time, it's not so bad. And she cuts the queues as well. So like this is massive queue for this kind of like deep fried donut thing at the end. It was amazing. It was so good. But like the queue went around the corner, as classic things in Asia do. Like if you want to know if something is good, like check out the places that got a really long queue and then just join the queue. Anyway, so this queue went all the way around the corner, but because I think she does this tour like basically every day, all the vendors know her really well, so she just like went in and
Awesome.
said like 4 of these donut things, and then she got given them straight away, and we didn't have to. I felt a bit bad for queue jumping, but not enough to not enjoy my donut.
Yeah, were they the twisty ones?
Yeah, the twisty ones. Yeah,
Those are called gwabegi.
Gwabeki. Okay.
Yeah,
they were
and
so good.
yeah, I really want to try like a real one, a fresh one there,
Yeah.
because they have them in the Paris Baguette, stores that are around.
Yeah.
Like I have one right down the street from me
Yeah.
where I live. But I don't think that they're nearly the same experience as, in the night market.
Yeah. They were just amazing because they're just so light, like the way that they were. So although they're deep fried and they're made of dough, and you kind of think, oh, it could be quite heavy, they're so light. So good. So good. I'd love to have one now, but yeah. And then I also went for a makeup lesson, which was a lot of fun as well. And I don't know if you have this experience, like I'm sure you do, but like, like how Asian people are just so much more direct with their comments about your looks and things. And
yes.
And it was funny because I went with my best friend who's Japanese. So the two of us are used to it. But I did think this might be a bit of a disconcerting experience for like a Westerner, because she's like, your skin is very dry and you don't look after it very well, do you? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Oh, you're right on both of those counts. And she's like, because you're getting old. I was like, yeah, that's true. I will also take that. You need to do X, Y, Z. I mean, she obviously meant it all in a, she was doing it in a kind of like, this is the advice you need because this is the stage of life you're at. And this is how lazy you've been with your skincare. So it was really good. I really liked it. I loved the fact that she was so direct, and instead of like blowing smoke up my ass about how amazing I looked, like she was just very like, right, you need this like heavier coverage now for your face because you're older. I was like, yes, you're right. Just tell me it all. Just bring it on.
Oh, that's so relatable.
Yeah.
I think I'll skip that because I have like,
you have Asian
I'm sure
aunties.
You do too, but I have the in-house, the relatives do to do that.
That's so true. So true. I so have that. In fact, my aunt was like, hey, so you could go and get like a double eyelid surgery. It's like plastic surgery in Korea is really good. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
oh my God, like, no. I mean, I really am too old to care, for starters. But second of all, it's just like,
same.
It's like, I mean, in a way I was a bit like, I love that you still care for me, that at my very advanced age, you still want double eyelids for me. Like, you haven't given up that hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of our Western listeners will be horrified, but this is truly the way that like older Asian ladies show that they care about you.
So true. It's so true.
By being really direct and suggesting, things like, oh, this will make you so much more beautiful.
I
know.
So anyway, I did not go for double eyelid surgery, or in fact any surgery in Korea. So I just went for this makeup lesson, but that was really fun. So anyway, there's a lot on there. There's like you could take bike tours, there's like trips along the Han River. So there's lots of different experiences on there. And I actually think it's a really great way to experience some of the life in Seoul without having to worry about navigating yourself and things. So so that's another one. So Grace, for your trip, how long are you going for? Where are you thinking of heading? What are going to be your main highlights?
So I'm gonna be there for almost 2 weeks, mostly in Seoul and a few days in Busan, because of course you have to take the train to Busan, and back.
Of course, you have to.
We're planning to do some of the classics, the old standards that I've done before, but my kids haven't. So, including Gyeongbokgong, Namsam Tower, Gyeongbokgong. So Gyeongbokgong is the big palace. Namsam Tower we've seen a bunch of times in lots of dramas. Gyeongbokgong is the stream that runs through the center of Seoul, and it used to be like this kind of like basically sewer, but they like redeveloped it and they made it really nice. And in Sadong, which is an artsy area, and like artsy with and also traditional crafts. Because I'm really curious also. I mean, I want to take my kids there, but I'm also really curious to see how things have changed. Because I get a few hints of that through dramas, like, wow, this looks so nice. I don't remember it like this. Like I don't remember seeing a lot of people doing the rent a hanbok experience at Gyeongbokgong when I was last there. It either wasn't a big thing or I just was oblivious. And Namsan Tower definitely did not have those locks before. I think somebody,
okay. So it's relatively recent. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I know this because when I was teaching English in Korea, I was also dating someone and we went up Namsan Tower and there were no locks.
else you would have been this.
Otherwise I would have I would have had that experience. But in 2006, I don't think that was a thing yet, or it wasn't a very obvious thing. But one of the places I've never been before that I'm most excited about seeing is called Daejangun Park in Yongin. And it's basically this big set complex with like a bunch of historical, sageuk dramas have been filmed. And also BTS ARMY will recognize it because Suga's Techita music video was filmed there. I'm really excited. I mean, it's kind of silly, like to go to a fake historical area, but it's like, so familiar, right? Because you've seen so many dramas. So I'm looking forward to that.
I really want to do that, but it's a bit outside of Seoul, right? It
is. It's like an hour, 45-minute drive. So I think that day we're going to need to book a van to take all of us there and back and stuff like that. And another thing that I'm really looking forward to is going to the super fancy Jimjilbang in Busan called Spa Land. I actually looked into going to the Jimjilbang.
Oh wait, no, you're another one. Sorry.
The one that the North Korean soldier ducklings went to in Crash Landing on You. Because that one looks like a lot of fun too. But I decided on the one in Busan because it'd be close to where I'm staying. I wouldn't have to do a separate trip out. Whereas that one, it's called the Red Ginseng Spa. Is in Paju, which is outside of Seoul, and so it would require another side trip, which I am having trouble fitting into my itinerary. So for now, that's not on it. But yeah, the Spa Land place is huge. It's I think it's run by Shinsegae, which is kind of a upscale department store company, and it has outdoor areas too. So that feels nice. We're also for the kids planning to do things like Lotte World and Alpaca World.
So wait, Alpaca World is, because I know Lotte World, we've seen it in many K-dramas. That's like a theme park, right? So Alpaca World, is that what it says on the tin? It's basically alpacas.
Yes. Yeah. It's you have to go outside of Seoul. So yeah, that's my other outside of Seoul excursion, is to go to Alpaca World and this rail bike area that's nearby. But the
Ah,
alpacas are so cute, and I think
oh,
my kids will really like it. So I mean, I'm sacrificing,
one day.
the red ginseng spa so that we could see cute alpacas with my kids.
They better blinking like them then.
They better. No, I'm kidding. I would love them too.
Yeah, alpacas are
So
very cute.
yeah, yeah. My parents and my sister are actually meeting us for some of the trip, and my mom said she wanted to take my kids to this Korean folk village,
Right.
Sokchon.
Okay.
Also, so we're gonna do that on the same day as we go to the Daejangun Park, because they're kind of in the same direction.
Yeah.
And I hope that it's gotten to be more fun, because I remember going to this folk village as a kid and being like, this is so boring. So I'm really hoping that they've like as with everything else, that they like developed it a bit more, and it's it'll be fun. But
I
it's
love
something my mom wants to do. So yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I love that she didn't realize what a boring experience it was for you. That she's like, yeah, let's do this with the grandkids. Grace loved it.
I mean, maybe I did love it, but I don't know. This really reminds me. I've been watching this show called Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne. It's like Columbo, except girl version. And
Oh,
last night I watched an episode where she has like those like I'm about to die, the flashing
oh yeah,
back moments,
yeah.
and she's like, you know, when I felt like I was about to die, I flashed back to this moment when I went to this like resort with my family as a kid, and I remember hating it. But then I flashed back to it when I was about to die. So maybe that was the happiest I've ever been. But anyway, just talking about this, like how maybe I remember it as being boring, but actually I really enjoyed it.
Maybe you did.
That reminds me of that. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's like just revisionist history in my mind.
You're gonna have to tell us about it if you do go. You're gonna have to tell us.
Yes, I will definitely. We'll do the.
Even if it's just to say, like, guys, don't go. It really was as boring as I remembered.
Yes, definitely. We could do part two. But actually, Sarah, since you've already gone, do you want to tell people more about the main highlights of your trip?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, as you know, I've only had a few days, so I really focused on Seoul. Even though I really wanted to go and see other places, I just thought I really should just try the main kind of tourist highlights, as well as some specific K-drama related locations, as well as inhale as much Korean food as I could, especially street food. So yeah, I did really pack it in. And I killed my steps. I think one day I did like 36,000 steps.
Wow.
So like I came back, I was so tired. But it was all good, and I don't regret a thing. So anyway, the hands down my favorite thing that I did when I was in Seoul was to hire a hanbok and go to Gyeongbokgong, which you've already mentioned is the largest of 5 historical palaces in Seoul. And if you wear a hanbok, you actually get in free. But honestly, just do it alone because it's just so much fun. There are now loads of hanbok places around the palace entrances, and as they have so many tourists there and they all kind of go for this experience, you don't have to worry about not being able to speak Korean because they're very well equipped to speak in English. There's tons and tons of choice. There's plenty of outfits for men, women, and children. And if you're not sure, hanboks are they're tied around your bust, right? So you don't have to worry too much about them. They're not very close fitting, as you probably know anyway from watching historical dramas. And they have jackets in all kinds of sizes, and the length of the hanboks for tall people as well as shorter people. And it also includes hairstyling. Although only if you have long hair. So like my Korean friend she has like kind of a bob just below her ears, and she was like, can I have my hair done? And they were like Asian ajumas, and they're like, no, hair too short. So she was just like, You can have choose a hairband, and then they basically have a stand of hairbands. It was just like, that's your hairstyle. Anyway, so if you've got long enough hair that qualifies you, as judged by these ajumas who do hair, you can you sit down and they will style it for you. And then there's different there's simple styles and then more complicated ones, and the complicated ones have more accessories and you pay a bit more for the complicated ones. I think I went for a relatively complicated one because really it's so cheap. The whole experience is really, really cheap. And then you can also add shoes and handbags, and men can get a gut. Is it a gut? That Joseon hat.
Mm-hmm.
Hat. Yeah, that Joseon hat that everyone sees in historical, so they can get one of those. And then once inside the palace, like every corner is just like a photogenic opportunity, and everyone else there, lots of people are wearing hanbok as well, so it's really like adds to the experience that you can really imagine yourself kind of in some historical like drama yourself. And there's lots of people that really know where all the best photo spots are as well, so you can just kind of follow groups of people around and go, yeah, like that place there, that corner there is really good. So yeah, it was super cheap, so it's like $15 for 2 hours. You can pay more if you want, like they call it designer hanbok. So they have some really beautiful ombre styles, and they have ones where everything matches and stuff. But honestly, even the basic ones were really, really beautiful. So that was my absolute top favorite experience. And I also went up Namsam Tower, which was a lot of fun that Grace has already talked about. And I also went up Lotte World Tower, which is like the tallest building in Seoul. I went in the daytime. It was kind of smoggy, so I didn't really get to see too far, but you do really get a sense of scale of how huge Seoul is. But probably for me, like one of the Patreon questions was, I think, your kiss, marry or die, I think. So something that you liked, something that you loved, and something that you'd be like, yeah. And for me that, okay, I would probably, have done without would be the Lotte World Tower. The marry me would be the hanbok experience around Gyeongbokgong. And then maybe the kiss would be, actually it would be Yeongmaland. So Yeongmaland is obviously a specific like K-drama experience. So for those of you who don't know, you might have seen Yeongmaland in various different dramas. So it's a disused amusement park. It's used heavily in The Sound of Magic and also appears in Cafe Myeongdong. It was most recently featured in Taxi Driver season 2. But basically anytime there might be a scene where they've gone to some kind of like dilapidated looking amusement park, it's Yeongmaland. So Yeongmaland used to be an amusement park, and then it closed, and then the current owners have just kept it as a disused amusement park for people to do filming in, and for people tourists like us to go to. So it's slightly outside of Seoul, although still very much on the subway system, so not difficult to get to. And you have to pay to get in, but it's not a lot. And when me and my colleague went, it was completely empty. And it's seriously really quite eerie. It makes great Instagram photos. I did a whole reel of it. So so on my @KDramaDis on Instagram page, I have a set of story highlights, and one of them is Seoul highlights. So if you go in there, the Yeongmaland reel that I did is in there, but it really does look like everything that they do on the set, it just stays there. Like there's this random one roller coaster car that's on the top of the roller coaster, and then they've still got that carousel there and this creepy ghost train thing. And this thing would never exist in the UK because it's a health and safety disaster.
Absolutely. I was about to ask, did you have to sign a waiver to walk in?
No. There's basically at the entrance, there's like this shack, like that this lady who takes the money lives in, and even her shack looks like a K-drama location, because honestly, like you look in and you can see she just basically lives in this house. Like there's a kitchen bit in the corner, and there's the bit where her bedding is, and then there's just a counter where she takes the money, but other than that, like on her left is all her like ramen, and like it's just like the whole experience is so surreal. But yeah, like my colleague who's British was going around, and he isn't like a a K-drama fan to the degree that we are, but he has seen a few K-dramas and he really loves zombies. And he loves kind of crazy locations. So he was totally up for coming to this place with me, which I'm really grateful for, because I don't think my Japanese friend would have been quite so appreciative. Anyway, so he was climbing around all these places in Yeongmaland. He was just like saying, this would just not exist in the UK. Like this is like these rickety old steps and like no safety guardrails and no one's supervising you. Like we were the only people there on a random Tuesday afternoon in Seoul and in November. And yeah, we had the place for ourselves. We were just walking around. No one cares. But it's it was so fun. It was kind of eerie, and it's also set within nearby are like a couple of primary schools, so there was like the sound of children playing, which is automatically really eerie when you've got like a this amusement park location. So it was really like, whoa. I would not have wanted to go there when it was a bit darker. Actually, it would have been properly creepy. But so it's a little bit of a trek out. Like probably took us half a day, just kind of like to get out there and then enjoy ourselves around there and take lots of pictures and then leave again. Although probably quicker if you just took a taxi, probably. But we did the subway system and took a walk through up there. So it's like a 20-minute walk from the subway station. But I really enjoyed that. So if that kind of sounds like it might tick your boxes, I really would recommend that. And I can also jot down in the show notes the website that I used to find it and the information. So that was like a whistle stop tour of my touristy highlights. Should we talk a little bit about where to stay? So for me, I was with work in Myeongdong, which is one of the main areas in Seoul, one of the most tourist areas actually as well. So I stayed with work at the Lotte Hotel in Seoul, which is super expensive and actually not very good value really, although it's a really amazing location. But when I was on my own dime, I stayed in the 4 Points by Sheraton Chosun. It's right by a subway station, but also walking distance to the palaces and Myeongdong Street. So I would personally really recommend Myeongdong as a place to stay, especially if you're only in Seoul for a few days, just because everything that you would probably want to go to is really near there. And then the thing is, I would just say, like, I'm like an ex-Lonely Planet kind of backpacker traveler type person, right? So I'm the kind of person that's like a little bit like, I hear the word touristy and I think, this is not my kind of place. This is not the kind of traveler I am, right? But then the reality is that is actually the kind of traveler I am nowadays, because it's like I've barely got any time and I just need all the things that I want in one place. And that is Myeongdong, right? So it's like everything that you want to buy as a souvenir is there, like all the restaurants that you want with English menus and people who speak English are all there. All the tourist places are there, like everything connects there. Just like, basically put aside the Lonely Planet backtracker person, if that person exists in you, and just say, right, this is where I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna hang where the other tourists hang. That would be my personal tip.
That's a good tip. I mean, a lot of the people who are posting on the Facebook groups are staying in Myeongdong because, it's like kind of the center of all the activity. I mean, there are definitely the people who are like, oh, it's too touristy, you should stay in Hongdae because it's like young and hip, or you should stay at a hanok, which is actually something that I'm gonna do with my family. It's not a real hanok though. It's like a hanok style house that is more modern.
Yeah.
And has air conditioning, which is very important for visiting Seoul in the summer. It is very important. So that was a priority. But so we're staying in that Airbnb hanok style house in Chongno near the Blue House at first. Yes. And then we're going to go to Busan for a few days and stay at a resort just because we thought, oh, it's the beach, treat ourselves.
You have to. You have to.
Yeah. And then we're going to come back and stay at another Airbnb in like an apartment in Gangnam. So I mean, fingers crossed, because like my experiences mostly in Korea have been staying at a relative's house.
Yeah.
So So this is very new for me. So I, fingers crossed that, because Airbnbs can be sometimes misleading. So I'm just hoping I chose well.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll find out, won't we? So we can have Grace's
Yes.
recommendations or not of
Right.
So I was thinking, actually, just for people who aren't sure what a hanok is, could you just explain a little bit about what they
Oh,
are?
yes. So a hanok is a traditional style Korean house where it's basically there's a courtyard, and then the rooms are like arranged in kind of maybe like a U shape around the courtyard, and the doors are made out of that kind of paper. Yes. So that's kind of how it is. I'm not sure how they insulate. But in those traditional in the hanoks, traditionally the way they would heat during the winter was through the floors.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I guess maybe when it's not air blowing, it's not as big of a problem. And you're always sitting on the floor. You're sitting on the floor to eat. You're sleeping on the floor. So maybe that kind of negated the whole lack of insulation problem. But yeah, so that's what a hanok is. If you've ever seen like Personal Taste, you will be intimately familiar with what a hanok looks like, because that house that they filmed in was like a big part of the plot. It's like this, it was a traditional house that had been modernized by like a brilliant architect. And then Lee Min-ho's character was like, I need to see this house. And so there's, lies and deception.
I think you don't have to tread. I don't think you have to tread so carefully, because this is the drama that I think Amy watched, obviously, because she was a big Lee Min-ho fan, and so she was like, "But I don't," because he pretends to be.
I do not recommend this drama either.
To be gay, right? He pretends to be gay, but he's not actually
he pretends
gay.
To, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's
problematic.
Highly problematic. But anyway, if you want to see a hanok, they feature it very prominently in that drama. Yeah. I mean, and they're all in the historicals also. Yeah. But like you would see a more kind of modern version of it. Yeah. And that one.
And John knows where actually Bukchon Hanok Village is as well, right? So that's kind of an area. It's an area that I visited that has, so it's a tourist attraction. So the whole area there is full of like more traditional hanoks, which a lot of them are open up now as cafes and places that you can visit. And it's really nice. It's really chilled, really, really pretty. And even though it's touristy, it's not like packed full of people kind of, peering at people's houses and taking pictures and stuff. So yeah, it's also a nice place to visit too.
Yeah. And so I'm staying on the opposite side of Gyeongbokgong from there, because Bukchon is on the east of Gyeongbokgong, and then I'm going to stay on the other side, closer to where the blue house is, because the blue house is just behind and slightly to the west of Gyeongbokgong.
And sorry, for those who don't know what the Blue House is, what is the Blue House?
Oh, the Blue House is the official presidential residence, which usually is not open to the public because presidents are living there, and it's not like the White House where they like just have a specific tour and you can go past and the living areas are separate. But in Korea, they hadn't had it open. But the way that I heard it was that the current president's wife, I think she is a practitioner of shamanism, and something about the Blue House was unlucky. So
they don't live there.
Or ill omened. So they don't live there. So they've actually opened it up to the public right now.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I love that. That's quite K-drama, isn't it? Like the president's wife has a shaman who has said, "You can't live here." Cool. Right. So, travel and getting around. I always find public transport in Asian cities are just so great. And I'm speaking as somebody who lives in the country, like outside of London, public transport is bad. It's not reliable and it's super expensive. But in Seoul, it was really easy to get around with the subway. Surprisingly for me, taxis are so cheap, so cheap. So I did go around on the subway a lot, but then I did my 36,000 steps, and then like the rest of the days I took a lot more taxis because I was like, I can't do 36,000 steps every day. So yeah, for me, taxis were really good. And then you're taking the train to Busan, as you said.
Yes. So I'm taking the bullet train, KTX, from Seoul Station to Busan. And I might actually be doing a day trip from Busan to Gyeongju, which is an area that has a lot of like ancient Buddhist sites and things like that. And also ancient like royal tombs and things like that. It's like in my itinerary right now, but once we're at the beach, we might be like, let's just chill. So I don't know. But yeah, so I'm doing that. And I've seen lots of chatter on the Facebook groups about, how difficult it is to book this. Like you have to do it. I think that there's a limitation on how far in advance you could do it. If you use the English version of the app, they assign you seats randomly. So then you have to like back out of it and then try again and back out of it and try again until you get the seats you want.
Oh, wow.
I haven't actually tried to do it yet because I'm not yet with a month out. I guess I could try and see if that month thing is real, but I'm just going to wait because I figure a month out is enough time that I won't, run out of options.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck.
Yes.
Right. So Korean language section. Yay. So we had this last time in our introductory podcast. We learned how to say Ji Taok's name properly, or I tried to anyway. So here we're gonna try, instead of learning another Oppa's name, we're going to learn some phrases to use. So while we're going around in Seoul. So over to you, Grace.
Okay, so of course the very basic is 안녕하세요, hello, in a polite way, and 감사합니다, which is thank you in a polite way. These are your friends because, like at the very baseline, I think, traveling to a foreign country, you always want to be able to say hello and thank you in the native language. But others that might be helpful are if you are shopping and you pick something up and you want to know how much it costs, you could say, 이것 얼마예요? 이것 얼마예요?
이것
얼마예요? And then as you go through your day, you will need to use the facilities. I have heard that there are clean facilities in subway stations.
Yes.
Was that your experience?
Yes, they are. Yeah. And
okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're not like Japanese style clean, because Japanese toilets are still the favorite toilets in the world for me.
Yes.
But mainland Chinese toilets are pretty bad. So I think for me, they are like not as good as Japanese, but still good. Yeah.
Acceptable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. So, but if you aren't in a subway station and you need to go, 화장실 어디예요? Is where is the bathroom?
어디예요? Right. Hey, so do you know what? This is one of those words that I know because it's Chinese. So the Mandarin for bathroom is 化妆室.
Whoa.
Yeah. It actually stands
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know the Chinese characters for it, but the Chinese characters are 化妆, which means to make up room. So it's not even actually a bathroom, it's like a posh room. So this is the makeup room. 化妆室.
Yes. I mean, that's the same in
Yeah.
Korean.
It's
Hwajang
amazing.
is like cosmetics.
Yeah.
So you are asking for
Makeup
basically the
room.
powder
The
room,
powder room.
the
Exactly. Yeah. That's the
yeah, the
posh word. Yeah.
makeup
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
Yes. 화장실 어디예요?
어디예요?
Is where is the bathroom? Okay. Another one that might come in handy is 포장해 주세요. 포장해 주세요 means please pack it to go. This is for like if you want food, like takeout.
So
If you want takeout food.
is this like when you order some food and then you want it to take out, or is it when you've like ordered way too much food and you need to pack a doggy bag? Because
This
both those
is
scenarios are like very highly likely to happen, I think.
that's true. So it's more for the former. It's
Right.
you're asking at the start that you get this food to go.
Yeah.
So I think if you've eaten your fill and you have a bunch left over, you might say 싸주세요, which is pack it.
Right.
Pack, this.
Yes.
Pack this. 싸주세요. 주세요 means like give to me, please give to me. 주세요.
Yeah.
So you'll hear 주세요 a lot at the end of a lot of like requests.
Right. Got it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So yeah. Are
So
there any? Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So my my main phrase that I found helpful to use. Oh, so first of all, like obviously my experience of traveling in Korea is going to be slightly different from a white Westerner's experience of traveling to Korea, because I will look like I'm Korean. So one of my most useful phrases was to say, I don't speak Korean, which I learnt off by heart because I had to say it quite a lot. And it started right from the plane. So like I took an Asiana Airlines flight. So Asiana are one of the two main Korean airlines, the other one being Korean Airlines. And obviously as soon as I got on the plane, they were just talking to me in Korean, and I was like, oh, it starts now. Everyone's going to assume that I'm Korean. So I learned this phrase, which I'm probably going to butcher, but 한국말 못합니다. So which I think is supposed to say, I don't speak Korean. So anyway, so there's a guy on the plane next to me in my seat who took pity on me because he realized that I am actually not Korean, but all the air hostesses kept talking to me in Korean. So he was like translating for me. And basically either saying she doesn't speak Korean, or basically just giving me whatever it is they were asking me to, whatever. So he was a Korean that was working in London. He was just going home to visit his parents for a short visit. Anyway, I practiced this phrase on him, and I said, how does this sound? And he went, actually not good. And I was like, oh, really? Is it really bad? Like my pronunciation is really bad? And he said, no, actually your pronunciation is too good. And I was like, okay. Okay, now I'm confused. He goes, yeah, thing is, you sound like you're saying that actually your Korean is okay, but you sound like you're being modest and saying that you can't actually speak Korean when you can actually speak Korean. And I said, okay, I think I get that. And he goes, yeah, so you need to make it more British accented. Like, I don't know. He goes, I can't really suggest how you might do that, but just say it, but say it more English. And I said, and he goes, so then people will take you seriously and think, aha, okay, she doesn't speak Korean, as opposed to she does speak Korean, but she's being modest about how much Korean she speaks. I was like, okay, I think I get that, because I do say that sometimes in Mandarin. I will say my Chinese is not very good, even though actually I'm fluent in Chinese, but I just want to excuse like how badly I think my Chinese is. Yeah. So I kind of got where he was coming from. So yes, thank you to my random traveler companion for helping point out that I needed to make I stopped trying to make my Korean sound more Korean, make it sound English, so that people know that I genuinely speak English.
That makes so much sense. Oh, because I have actually been like practicing how to say my Korean is not very good, but I might just be confusing people and I should just accept that they will judge me for my poor Korean.
Yeah.
But at least it won't be confusing then.
I'm saying yep. I'm saying yep, obviously, because I appreciate where you're coming from, not because I think your Korean is bad, but
no, my Korean is bad.
I have the same experience like in Hong Kong when I speak. I mean, there are some. I got so annoyed once. I was in Hong Kong and I was ordering in Cantonese. It was in a KFC actually, and I wanted to order fries, and I used the word potato instead of fries, and this woman just looked at me like, she's like, you mean fries, you don't mean potato. And I was like, oh, it's just so like, she was so mean about my Cantonese. I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to do the rest of this order in English and you're going to have to translate. Because I'm like, I'm not taking the attitude from you. I'm just not. I was like, let's see how good your English is. Right, so
that actually, no, I am familiar with that also. Like I remember just speaking Korean poorly as a child visiting Korea, and people looking at me like there's something really wrong with me. Like, what is your problem? What is your problem that you cannot speak our language correctly? And then I'd just be like, okay, look, I am a kyopo. Kyopo.
What's a kyopo?
A kyopo it's like a casual way of saying foreign-born person of Korean descent. I have since learned that the way you say Korean American is 한국계 미국인.
Right.
That means like a Korean who's actually an American. I think basically 한국계 미국인, but most people don't say that. Most people say kyopo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, the other phrase that I found quite useful was just to ask them to wait a moment. So, am I saying it right? Was it 잠시만요?
잠시만요.
Yeah.
잠시만요. Yeah. I learned it 잠깐만요, but I think that's probably more casual. So 잠시만요 is the more polite way to say it.
So that's what I would usually say to the taxi driver while he was talking at me in Korean, and I was struggling to open my Papago app to find the Korean for what I needed to say. So I was like, 잠시만요, and then find the app and then show him my phone, and then So that's that was another useful phrase, just to have them give you some time before you can find it is what you need. I mean, it's so much easier to travel nowadays with a phone, so. It was relatively straightforward for us to give locations of where we wanted to go, because we would just have it on the phone and then just show them, and all of them drive with like a map app themselves, so they just put the same thing in and then they're off. So that was relatively straightforward. I found the experience of being in a taxi with, say, me and my Japanese friend versus me and my white Western colleagues was really different. So we found I don't know whether we just chanced upon them or something, but we had some really funny Korean taxi drivers in the cars with us when I was with my white Western colleagues. Like, one of them literally, like, he just asked us, where we came from. Which is often, by the way, the first question that people ask, I find, like, in any taxi, whether it's in China or where, or Japan. Anyway, so then we said we were from England. We said we were from the UK, and then he burst into our national anthem, and he could actually sing more words than I could. Like, he knew it off by heart.
Wow, that's amazing.
I was so impressed, and this was completely not safe, and this is obviously why we have many violent deaths in K-dramas, but he was checking his phone while he was driving, and showing us the pictures of the Queen, and trying to explain to us that he felt very sad for us that she had passed away.
Oh gosh. Oh, that's so funny. That
That's
that
what,
actually reminds me of um a time when the last time I was in Korea, but I was with my husband, and we got into a car and we had a similar conversation. And then at some point in this conversation, the taxi driver said, "Can you explain to me, what does take on me mean?" And we are like, "What? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Take me on." Like he was like, there's a song. It says "Take me on" and then "Take on me," and it's very confusing. And my husband and I were like, actually, we have no idea either. We have no idea.
it's Norwegian. Oh.
But yeah, I mean, I guess you have to have a kind of an outgoing personality to be
A
a
taxi
happy
driver,
cab
yeah.
driver.
So
Yeah.
true. It's so
You
true.
want to meet people, you want to talk to,
Yeah.
strangers.
Yeah.
I mean, that would not be the job for me.
No,
So
no,
more power to them.
yeah, I'm not great at either driving all day or making small talk. That generally taxi driver is a career that, yeah, would be the bottom of my
Hmm.
wish list.
And how often or how common was it that you would randomly interact with people who did speak a bit of English?
Well, so this is
Was
where
it-
this is where I think white Western travelers will, or rather non-Asian looking travelers might have a advantage because you evidently, people will look at you and go, yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to speak Korean to you. So when I was with my colleague, obviously everybody kept speaking to me in Korean, assuming that I was his travel like guide slash translator slash, native, like,
right.
and I'd be like, no, I don't know anything more than he does. So sometimes actually in some shops, I was like, I'm just going to send you in because otherwise they're going to talk at me. Whereas they're going to try at least maybe to speak English with you. So yeah, so he often got people speaking English to him, actually.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, especially in Myeongdong, were used to speaking to foreigners in English, and other
Uh-huh.
younger people wanted to practice their English and things. So I think those who don't look Asian will have an experience of that. Whereas yeah, I definitely had people just assume that I could speak Korean. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, it backs up. I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine, and we were talking about traveling to Korea, and he was worried about because he's learning Korean and he's Italian American, but he was worried about like, oh, are they going to look down on my pronunciation? Are they not going to be able to understand anything I'm saying? And I was like, don't worry,
No.
your face will tell them like they shouldn't expect like perfect Korean, and they'll love that you're trying so hard.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
It's Yeah, it's when they look at my face and my Korean isn't perfect that they're like, what is going on? What's
Yeah,
wrong
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you'll
what's
have
wrong
that.
with the situation?
Yeah, you'll have that thing. Like I have this thing. Yeah, exactly that. Like I was with like my Western colleagues in China, and they were speaking like really quite broken Chinese. I mean, kudos for them for trying, but they'd speak their broken Chinese, and then these Chinese people were like, "Wow, your Chinese is so good, just so good." And then my Western colleagues were like, "Is it?" And I'm just like, "No, obviously it's not." In my head, anyway. I was like, I wasn't that rude, but I just thought, no, obviously not. And then I'd say my bit, which was more fluent, and they'd be like, "Your Chinese is so bad. You really need to improve your Chinese." I'm like, brilliant. This is just, yeah. Right.
The double standard.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that. Right. So shopping. I wanted to talk a little bit about this. I mean, obviously, like Korea is a shopping paradise. And on the whole, I mean, I live in London, so it's all relative. I mean, I don't live in London, so I live in the UK, but I lived in London for like 15 years. So it's all relative, but I found Seoul relatively inexpensive. The travel was inexpensive, the food was inexpensive, and things to buy were pretty on par, probably with what I found in the UK, if not cheaper. So specifically about K-drama and K-pop merchandise, I just wanted to bring up. So I had read in similar to you, I had kind of looked at other people's trying to travel comments and stuff, and there was this one person that had put photos up of shops selling K-drama things, and then somebody else asked like, oh, where did you find this shop? And she's like, oh, they're everywhere. So I kind of went to Seoul thinking they were genuinely everywhere, but they're not everywhere, right? They are K-drama, especially. I think K-pop, you can definitely find more stuff, but K-drama is not everywhere. It's just from my experience, there might have been like pockets of where there were some more, but for me, it was really just in Myeongdong, and actually specifically in the underground mall at Myeongdong Station, which is quite a long mall that runs like the length of effectively Yujiro Street, but the bit around Myeongdong Station itself, there are a few stores there, and they sell both K-drama and K-pop stuff. So that's the only place I found places to buy. So if you're looking specifically for that kind of merchandise, those are the shops that's the kind of way you need to go. But generally, also the other things that I wanted to buy from Korea were skincare things. I went to this really cute earring shop where they replicate a lot of the K-drama earrings. So they actually have pictures of like lots of pictures of Park Min-young in all her, various rom-coms, because she has she has really good earring game, and they've replicated all these earrings, and then you can just buy them. And that's in Myeongdong too. And cute souvenirs for to take home for the kids, like cute cartoon characters and things like that. They were all in Myeongdong. So basically for me, I got all the souvenirs that I needed from there. Socks everywhere. Like socks are huge in Korea. So lots and lots of stores that sell socks, and socks were really cheap as well, like £1 or like a little over $US for a pair of socks. So really good, cheap souvenirs. What about you, Grace?
Well, I'm not much of a shopper, but I do want to get some souvenirs. So it's good to know that the K-drama and K-pop stuff is mostly in Myeongdong. I remember really enjoying Namdaemun Market on previous trips, because so Dongdaemun is more like for clothes, and I've never been very much into clothing, and then it was just, and sizing is difficult in Korea. So Namdaemun is the place that I really enjoyed, because that's kind of like where a lot of the souvenir shops get their souvenirs, like in bulk. I remember wanting to buy like a traditional looking tea set, and it was like at a souvenir shop, really expensive, looked really nice. And my grandma was like, no, we don't buy it here. We went to Namdaemun and it was way cheaper. So that's mostly where I plan to do my shopping. Hopefully it's still, the same, everything a little bit cheaper. And then also, I found it was a little bit cheaper, but I don't like, for me personally, it might be because you've got you speak Korean and you are Korean, but I personally found it a little bit overwhelming. So it's like so big, and there's almost too much choice, I found. I know that sounds crazy, but especially if you're someone who doesn't do a lot of shopping like I don't. So like I was mentioning about the earring shop. So the earring shop had in itself like 1,000 pairs of earrings, which was already quite overwhelming, but at least I found I could pick like 10 pairs of earrings. Okay. But in Namdaemun, they had 3 streets of earrings shops. And I said to my colleague, I want to buy some earrings. He's like, okay, go for it. I'm like, I don't know where to start. I literally don't know where to start. So I felt almost like, I know it probably would have been a little bit cheaper, but there was an element of like, at least someone else has picked them and also labeled them as Park Min-young earrings. I was like, that's true.
But
I mean,
if you're short for time, maybe it was really, but although I did really, 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 I think we chatted about this as well. There is in the middle of the Namdaemun market are various little food streets where there's like it's not even a street, like an alleyway where they all specialize in a specific type of food. And so I went to have the cut noodles. Is it that
kalguksu?
Kal
Kalguksu.
kalguksu, yes. So this alleyway was only kalguksu noodles. So yeah, I had a bowl there, and they were better than the ones that were made famous by the Netflix Street Food Asia program in the night market. So
Yes.
yeah, Gwangjang Market is the market I went to with the Airbnb food tour. Yeah.
That one's huge, right?
It's big. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I was quite glad to do it on the street tour, because it's quite overwhelming. But anyway, so it's still totally worth going to Namdaemun Market because it is an experience of itself. I just found the shopping part of it quite overwhelming because there's so many stalls and so much choice.
Yes.
So if you're going back to blankets.
Oh,
I never knew about Korean blanket. Please tell us about Korean blanket. I love blankets.
No, well, I'm not sure where you can reliably get these because I've gotten them at Namdaemun Market before. But I really like the light Korean blankets for the summertime. They've just got a very thin, soft cotton outside and like a bit of a fluff inside.
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen them on dramas. Like the way that Koreans make their beds is interesting. It's like sheet and then a blanket and then another blanket and then it's like you wash the whole blanket. But anyway, these blankets, I think that they're at Namdaemun Market. My husband calls them cloud blankets because they're just really soft and light. Yeah, they're comforting.
I want one now. Right.
Yeah.
So K-pop, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you found out research-wise about K-pop? Because I am not really a K-pop fan. So with my limited time, I didn't do anything K-pop related.
So I am a K-pop fan, but I am, I'm kind of baby ARMY. I'm not like all in. My whole life is ARMY. Not yet. I mean, that's not really my personality also. So I'm going to be like more like an Amy ARMY style person. But yeah, so everything I've read so far about trying to go to K-pop concerts in Korea has seemed a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So given that it's like kind of first time back in a long time, traveling with family, a lot to coordinate, I'm thinking I'm going to skip it this time.
Yeah.
But I am going to try to go to Jimin's dad's cafe in Busan called Magnate. It seems really like a low-key, low-pressure way to feel like some ARMY love and connection. So that's going to be my K-pop stop. But for people who have like the energy and time and commitment, I really commend you and support that. And, like there's lots of information. If you like join these groups or if you go on Reddit, I bet there's like huge Reddits on this also. So you definitely have to be a member of like the group's fan club, like official ARMY member or, official stay or whatever if you, are a Stray Kids person. And then you follow them on all the socials so you won't miss any of the announcements. And then you need to get a Korean SIM card so you can have an in-country phone number to be able to buy the tickets when they become available. And I'm not an expert at all. This is all from Facebook. I just want to give a sense of like the steps that you would need to follow to get maybe to get tickets. Even then, it's not like a guarantee. As I'm sure, all the K-pop fans out there are aware of. It's not a guarantee. But yeah, so it's a lot. So, cheering on anyone who's going to do that. But I, for this trip, am not.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I would say, by the way, that a Korean SIM card is pretty mandatory anyway for your trip. My colleague didn't bother to get one because he'd read that there's Wi-Fi everywhere, which is kind of true, but kind of not. And either way, if you're stuck in the middle of the street, like in between Wi-Fi spots, then you're kind of stuck, right? And it's so cheap. So I really recommend that you do it. And you can get it at the airport because the stand's there. Everybody speaks English, and it's just, you've got it like from the get-go, and you don't have to worry about getting to your hotel and then not being able to get onto data to look up, this, that, and the other. So
Right.
get a Korean SIM at the airport. Okay, so I also wanted to just cover briefly food, because food was one of my main things that I really wanted to do a lot of in Korea. And oh my God, there were so many options. But first of all, before we get to food, can I just say, like, Koreans really love their coffee, right? I mean, like, I thought I knew as a K-drama fan how much they love their coffee because they're always ordering Americanos. But honestly, I live in Europe, right? We are a pretty big coffee culture country, countries as well that I've traveled in. But in Seoul, I was just amazed by how many coffee shops there were, and they were full, right? They had proper business, but you could go down a street and like every other shop was a cafe. And they have obviously the chain. So Starbucks is pretty big, I found, in Korea, like way bigger in Seoul than it is in the UK, and other Korean coffee chains, but also loads of really, really lovely boutique-y, artsy, really differently themed cafes. So the Korean cafe culture seems to be, was it as huge when you were there last?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't as big when I was there last. Although maybe it's a thing that I didn't notice because I have never been a huge coffee drinker, but I think it really has developed a lot since then.
Yeah.
Just like the cutesy, like, I don't know, like you said, lots of themed things. Like when I'm looking at the restaurant reviews, like every other thing that I click on is a cafe, and they each have a different ambiance and a different specialty and all of that. So I think if you like coffee or if you like cafes, this is really going to be a nice thing to wander around visiting all the different cute cafes.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like I didn't have enough time to do that this trip, but certainly because I don't really drink alcohol, so I think it's a really good alternative way of spending your time drinking a beverage instead, like enjoy the cafe culture instead. So food. So one thing I did find was, and I think this has been common in traveler threads as well, that the food portions in Korean restaurants are often quite big because they're for groups that you order, like you go together with, friends or family. So if you're solo traveling, you might struggle to obviously finish a portion of food that's for 2 or 3 people, and potentially have a little bit less choice. What would you say to that?
Yeah, and actually, did you ever experience someone telling you that you couldn't dine alone in their establishment? Because that is a thing.
Oh, really? I didn't, because I didn't
Yes.
travel. I didn't actually have any meals alone. I was lucky enough to always be with either my friend or my colleagues. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is helpful to know is that all of the big department stores have huge food halls at the bottom. So, like, if you are traveling alone, and most of the time, you won't have a problem, but there will be restaurants that will turn you away because they don't serve just one. You can say that, you will order two persons worth of food, but even then, you might have trouble because it's also a culture that like leftover food is kind of like wasting food is kind of a no-no also. So that is trouble. But the department stores always have really yummy food options in the basements. There's like a grocery store and then lots of like booths of different foods. So that, I think that's a good option for solo travelers.
And also I think street food was also a good way to, well, that street food is fun to have anyway, but it was also a good way of trying lots of different food. So for me, like, I didn't have enough days to try all the food that I wanted to eat, for example. So like, so Myeongdong traditionally Myeongdong had a really good street market, street food, night market. It all just died away during lockdown. So if you read some of the older threads, it will say that Myeongdong's dead and there's nothing there anymore. But actually, it started up again. So I was there November 2022, and it was definitely, you could see that a lot of stores had moved out, but you see lots of new stores beginning to move in. And the night market there was pretty active, and there was a really good choice. So again, for me, because I was on such a short time frame, it was a really good way of me trying, like there was pork belly on a stick. I got plenty of chances to have tteokbokki, the fish cake skewers. They also had like seafood and fried chicken. So then you didn't have to go to a specific restaurant that did all this different food. You could kind of just try a little bit of everything along the street. And the one in Myeongdong, all the signs and stuff for the food were all in English as well as in Korean. So it was really kind of traveler friendly.
That's awesome. Also, I just realized, Naver could be useful for solo travelers, to scout out, these dining options ahead of time, because I remember reading something about how there's actually like a dedicated search button that has like a picture of like onigiri, like triangle, the triangle rice.
Yeah, balls.
Thing. So it says 혼밥 on it, which means solo eater.
Okay.
So you can actually, I think, filter in Naver Maps for restaurants that will specifically serve solo eaters. And if you go to a barbecue restaurant, you could just say 2인분 시킬게요, which is I will order 2 persons worth. If they want to say, oh no, we don't serve just 1 person.
Yeah.
And that on all of the posts, that seems to work for barbecue restaurants, because the meat portions aren't as big as like if you go to like, a 부대찌개 place.
Yeah.
It's like a huge thing of stew.
Yeah.
So like you saying you're going to order, enough for 2 people is like, okay, but you're not going to eat that. Apparently for like barbecue places, because the meat portions aren't as big, they're like, okay, you can buy 2 and eat it. So
and then obviously also there's night markets, which is like street food. But then the other thing that I think is an experience to try is to eat at convenience store, because that's like
yes.
like culturally, because I mean, we just don't have them in the UK. We do not have 7-Elevens or convenience stores that are open 24 hours. And we certainly don't have the ones that stock all of this kind of convenience food that Korean convenience stores stock. So I think there's definitely an experience of, buying your pre-packaged processed sausage and your pre-packaged processed kimbap and your all the meals that you can heat up in the microwave there, and all the different type of ramen and the hot water you can pour. So I think all of that is definitely an experience, and obviously very accessible for solo travelers.
Yes, and it's a quintessential, K-drama experience also.
That's it, yeah. Right. The other topic I wanted to mention just briefly, just because I found it not as straightforward as perhaps I was assuming it would be, which is money and cash. So whereas lots of places take credit cards, it is obviously always handy and useful to have some money. So, but not all ATMs take foreign credit cards, debit cards rather. So you need to find ones that have the words global ATM on them, and they're generally in the bigger banks. So I got a load out at the airport, because obviously all the ATMs there are global, and then when I ran out of that cash in Seoul, I looked for the bigger banks that had the global ATMs in them. And then the other thing that I found surprising, so I don't know how common it is in the US for you guys to be using contactless payment methods and things, but in the UK it's now like I can pretty much get around just with my watch and just pay on either my watch or my phone without getting my card out. And I assumed that in Seoul that would be really easy too, because they're so technologically advanced, but actually it wasn't common at all. So I had to physically pull out my card, and they didn't generally have contactless. But that they had kind of the contactless experience in that, like, you just stick the card in the reader, you don't sign, you don't put a pin in, they don't care. So they don't even do any checks. It's up to a certain amount. So I think it's similar to contactless, like in the UK, you can now do contactless up to £100. So I don't think it's as high as that for Korea, but up to a certain amount, they don't really check. Over a certain amount, they'll make you sign. But yeah, I haven't physically gotten out a credit card and had to sign for it for quite a long time. So that was something that I was surprised about.
Yeah. I live in Silicon Valley, but I regularly still pull out my credit card. So, I mean, it might be me being kind of a boomer, also, when it comes to technology and not like really understanding how this contactless stuff happens. So that might just be my preference, and people who live around me might be thinking, Grace, you're just clueless. But this is normal for me, so I guess I will feel right at home.
You'll feel right at home. Yeah. I think for us, well, we were kind of going contactless anyway, but then I think the COVID thing just sped it all up. So I think for European countries anyway, it's probably a bit more.
That makes sense.
A bit more popular these days. Right. Yeah. So then we had some other questions from Patreon members, because we put a thread up in the Patreon. So there was a question about K-drama sites. So Grace has already mentioned Klook as having some K-drama tours, but the other website that I found really helpful was Korean Drama Land, so koreandramaland.com, and it has both locations that you can search and also K-dramas that you can search. So you could, for example, if you're really into, let's pick Amy's favorite, so Goblin, then you could find all of the Goblin filming locations all listed out on this website. Or you could have it the other way, which happened to me actually. I was walking past a coffee shop, which is called Mauritius Brown, near one of the women's universities. And I was like, oh my God, I so know this location. Like, I know this is in a K-drama, but I can't for the life of me remember which one it was. No, actually, I haven't seen Yumi Cells. So loads of people said Yumi Cells, but actually I remember it from Tomorrow, but I didn't realize it was that. And so then I did the reverse of that. So I looked up the location, and then it gave me all the K-dramas that had been filmed in the cafe, of which one was Yumi Cells, and one of them was Tomorrow. So it's a really good and useful kind of tool for either or. So you could either look up your favorite K-drama location, or you could be in a place and think, oh, wait, what's near me that was once used in a K-drama? So I really recommend that site, and kudos and props to the people that maintain this site of like hundreds and hundreds of locations.
It's amazing.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Then we also got a question on, this is for you, Grace. So is it easy/doable to visit Busan and Jeju inside a 10-day trip, or totally unrealistic?
So this is a subject of hot debate on the Facebook groups, because most people will contend that you need at least 4 days for Busan and at least 3 or 4 days for Jeju, which leaves you with very few days in Seoul. So you should just pick one or the other. But I mean, to me, it seems really like it matters how much you want to do it, because, to do Busan, you're probably going to train there and back. It's, 2.5 hours each way. I personally don't think there's a lot that I want to see in Busan. So if you are like me and you just want to see a few things, then I imagine you can do that in 2 days. Jeju is an island, and you have to drive all around it, and the most efficient way to get there is to fly. So that one, I really do think maybe at least 3 days would be good. But it really depends For me, I don't like to push myself, but some people really like to go, go, go.
Yeah.
So do you want a vacation or do you want travel? You know, like, because
To really pack it
like,
in. Yeah.
I want a bit of vacation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would just want to add to that was I found that because I have my experience of traveling in some Asian countries or Asian cities specifically quite tiring just because of how huge they are. So I found that the big Asian cities like Beijing and Shanghai, Tokyo were quite exhausting places to travel in because they're so big and to get around where you need to go. Quite exhausting. But in contrast, I think Seoul was not as exhausting as that. So they're not as big and sprawling as, say, Tokyo, but still pretty tiring. So if you do want to see lots of the different places and things, it's still a lot to pack in a day that will leave you quite tired. So I would probably recommend that you do pace yourself on that one. We also had a really interesting question on this. So the question was thoughts on hanbok rentals as a Westerner, appreciation or appropriation. I really like this question actually. So I just thought I would just cover off what cultural appropriation for me is. So for me, it's something where you're making money off of something that is part of someone else's culture, and without doing any work to understand or appreciate the difficulties of that culture, or join in its fight for any anti-racism of the people from that culture experience. So obviously we've seen in the news recently Gwen Stefani and her Harajuku girls as being an egregious example, but also yoga, for example, which is a predominantly white, healthy, hippie thing that people do, but is obviously actually from India. So that for me is kind of the more typical examples of cultural appropriation. For me, and obviously, Grace, I want your views on this as well. For me, hanbok hire, I think, is more in the appreciation category. So you're not making money out of it. You are in fact hiring them off of Korean based, Seoul-based companies. And you're doing Korean tourism a service in a way by sharing this with friends, which might make them want to visit Korea and might make them, curious about Korean culture and understand where these outfits come from. So for me, it's more in the appreciation part rather than the appropriation part. But what do you think, Grace?
I agree with you. I agree that it is more of an appreciation thing because this is a thing that is encouraged, by the tourist industry there. You're not taking ownership of it. You're not claiming it as like, oh, this is my thing. So I agree that is appreciation and not appropriation. And there's a lot of conversations to be had about appropriation when it comes to Korea, but this one I think is pretty clearly like an appreciation thing because you're supporting the industry, you're supporting these artisans, the makeup artists and things like that. So I think it's pretty safe.
Yeah. Yes. Go rent hanboks, guys.
Yeah.
So as you know, I had a short trip. So there were like quite a few things that I really wanted to do that I didn't manage to fit in. And there were probably things that you, even though you're going for a slightly longer time than me, have wanted to fit in but couldn't. So I thought we could cover them off a little bit in our last section. So for me, on my list of things that I wanted to do but just ran out of time for was K-beauty. So actually going for some skin treatments, some facial treatments. I never got the chance to do that, but I understand that actually it's a lot more foreigner friendly, and there are actually some companies out there that will help you book appointments and things if you want to have either more simple treatments or actually want to have some quite extensive treatments. There is all of that. And I also know that if you wanted plastic surgery, for example, there's a whole kind of tourism section that can help you with that if that was a kind of thing that you wanted to do in Korea. I also really wanted to try out Korean karaoke, so noraebang, and try out a coin one specifically because I've been seeing it in K-dramas. But I think I actually had planned to do that one evening with my friend who's, as I said, she's Japanese, so she's all up for karaoke as well. But we were just so tired. I think I was still quite jet lagged, so I think it got to about 9 o'clock in the evening. We're like, should we go back out? And we're like, no, let's get on our pajamas. So I kind of ran out of steam. And then I never made it to a jimbang, to a sauna spa thing, and put my hair up in Princess Leia towel buns. I really wanted to do that. I mentioned that I didn't have enough time for cafes, but also I really wanted to try, and again, I'm probably going to mangle the pronunciation of this, but the beer tents, the pojang matcha beer tents, the
Pojang matcha.
pojang matcha. Yes. I actually saw some near my hotel, and I was like, oh, I really want to go, but I think we were rushing to go and do something else. And so I said, oh, we'll go back another time, but we never actually did. But for me, that's like such a quintessential K-drama thing.
Absolutely.
So I really want to go and do that.
And then also, my husband wants to do that too.
Oh, he does. Oh, you guys should totally. Yeah. Well, if you're because you're traveling with family, you have kind of inbuilt babysitting, right? For at least,
for part of it, yes.
For part of it, yeah.
We're gonna have to do that. Take some pictures.
Oh yeah, do it. That'd be so cool. And then obviously for me, getting outside of Seoul as well, and seeing more of the rest of Korea. What about you, Grace? Were the things that you really wanted to do that you couldn't fit in to your plan this time?
Well, I actually really wanted to go to Seoraksan, which is one of the mountains, one of the famous mountains near the East Sea, and Sokcho, which is a beach town there. But it was really difficult to book accommodations. And so because we wanted to, for that part, we wanted to stay at like hotels instead of Airbnbs. So then, like, I had a conversation with a Korean woman who works at the Sokcho resort for Lotte, and we like kind of figured it out between her little bit of English and my little bit of Korean. But so basically, what she said I had to do is like call every night 30 days in advance to book each night of my stay, and I was like, okay, this is too much. Too much. I can't do this. And she was like, and even then you might not get the room because for the members of the resort, there's priority. So they get to try to book like 60 days in advance instead of 30 days. And so I was like, okay, it just seems like too much stress.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, that's a thing that I want to do because hiking the mountains is a big thing for Koreans. Like when I went to Korea to teach English for 4 months, my mom kept telling me, go to the mountains, hike the mountains. The mountains are beautiful in Korea. So I wanted to do some, mountain stuff, but that was not in the cards for this trip. So
I think it's hard with kids as well. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe your kids are hardy walkers, but mine aren't. So I was like, I'm not going up a mountain, like to go up a mountain with my kids whining the whole
cable
way.
Cars and stuff.
I know, exactly.
So.
And then one final question: do you have advice for when's a good time to visit Korea? Like, what time of the year? Obviously, you're going in August, and it will be hot. But what would your advice be?
My advice would not be to go to Korea in August. In July and August, Korean weather is like people who are traveling from Southeast Asia will be familiar with it. Or even Hong Kong, where it's really, really hot and muggy.
Yeah.
For lots of hot, humid for lots of the time, and then it just pours down rain out of the blue for a couple of hours, and then you will have nice weather for like a couple hours. The air will clear up a little bit and won't be as sticky right after it rains, but then it comes back pretty quick. So unless you really like that kind of sticky, humid weather, hot weather, I wouldn't go in August. The best times to go are fall and spring, because Korea has really beautiful fall colors for the trees. And also it has lots of flowering trees in like March, in the springtime, cherry blossoms, other blossoms. I mean, cherry blossoms are what everyone talks about, like both for Korea and Japan. So those are the two ideal times to go. But if you have a child who is in school, those are not the ideal times to go, unfortunately. So yeah, if you don't have children, take the opportunity while you don't have children to go during the really nice times like fall and spring.
So true. I went in November, actually, late November, but I was told that the time, so I had amazing weather there. I could walk around without a coat, so just have a jumper on. But my Korean colleagues told me that it was unseasonably mild. So it was really, really quite warm for November at that time. But it was really nice. It was really nice. Yeah. So I felt really blessed. Great. Right. Okay. So I think we're wrapping up this podcast. I hope for those of you who are either planning a trip to Seoul or maybe just dreaming of a trip to Korea, that you found this podcast interesting. And like I said, I think we are going to try and do a second edition of this with some guest speakers who can tell us a bit more about what it's like on the ground. So if you've got any questions, please email us on the pod, or you can also drop it in the comments of social media channels. But I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, and we hope to be back with another podcast really soon about some other K-drama related topic.
So until then,
안녕히
계세요.
계세요.
감사합니다. Thank you for listening to Afternoona Delight. Where can you find us outside the pod? Head on over to afternoonadelight.com. That's AFTERNOONADELIGHT.com. You'll find links to all our social media, our book recs, K-pop and K-skincare recs, and if you want even more Afternoona Delight, because really who doesn't, you can join our Patreon, where you can choose the patron level that's right for you. Join in daily K-drama conversations, listen to bonus podcast episodes just for patrons, and participate in our monthly live K-drama support group via Zoom. We can't wait for you to be a part of the community. Until next time, annyeong!